So yeah, and overall, it's just harder to protect your peace, comparatively speaking, because you don't have full control over your environment. Living at home in your late 20s gets treated like either the smartest financial move you can make or the biggest sign of failure. Truth is, it's both. Depends on the context. Today I'm breaking down the pros and cons from my own experience. This is my situation. Your mileage may vary. Because let's be honest, everyone's situation is different. We'd all like to think that everyone's relationship with their parents is perfect. Unfortunately, that is not the case. Obviously, it's not something everyone can do. I mean, just look at deconstructing narcissism because he has to get away from his narcissistic boomer parents. Anyway, before we get into the pros and cons of living at home in your late 20s, or really as an adult, if you have the option, be sure to give this video a like. Comment your pros and cons of the situation if you are living at home as an adult, and whether the pros outweigh the cons or the cons outweigh the pros. I look forward to the discussion. Don't forget to subscribe for cultural commentary and rants from a man caught between generations. And last but certainly not least, feel free to join me at the Zillennial Nexus Point Discord, where we can keep this discussion going, and I can share my AI generated videos from old photos I took. So be sure to join me there. Link will be in the description below. Anyway, the first pro of living at home in your late 20s or as an adult: no rent, no mortgage. If your job pays decently, you can money max way faster. Okay, not everyone can do that because some parents may charge rent. I know someone whose parents have him pay rent. But hey, at least he's somewhere familiar. Like me at that point, I would be a little more motivated to move out to a place all to myself at that point, because if I am paying, I'm going to pay for something that I think is more worth it, or that there's less of a trade-off. So I guess if you're paying rent to your parents, at least your money's not going to a greedy landlord. I guess that's the only trade-off I can think of. But if you're paying rent to said greedy landlord, you get a little more say in your situation, especially if you manage to avoid having roommates. See, like I said in previous videos, if I am paying a dime in housing expenses, I am going to go for the best that I can get and have it all to myself. And then I'd almost never leave it because I am getting my money's worth if I'm paying full price. But anyway, if you have no rent or a mortgage because you live with your parents and your job pays decently, you can money max way faster. That's the point of all of this. And in my case, I can rationalize going out often and spending when I'm out there because I'm not trying to squeeze rent into my budget. Now, it might be smarter to take exactly what I would be paying in rent and putting it aside for a down payment, or stockpiling enough and establishing a income history that renters can look at and be like, oh, this guy can easily afford the rent for the amount of time for the lease. That's definitely a benefit of money maxing. Now, you don't have to pay all the rent in advance up front, but it does give you enough of a cushion if you become unemployed. Now for the con. The first con is sharing spaces. Unfortunately, you don't get the luxury of space to yourself. Now, I have Henry's Mojo Dojo Officina office here where I record the videos. And then I have Henry's Mojo Dojo Dormitorio bedroom where I admit I do more of my editing there because I'm sitting on my Yogi Bo Max instead of this office chair that feels like it's about to give out. And I'll admit, it's also a lot more convenient. And I have my Apple TV, my Switch 2 set up there as well. So there's that. But yeah, as I've mentioned in previous videos recently about the kitchen, I am very tired of having to share a kitchen rather than try and assert space when I just know that my mom is going to overwrite it and be like, my house, my rules. I've decided to just minimize the amount of work I have to do in there for my food and time max while I'm at it. And then enjoy the more luxurious or harder to make foods when I'm out and about. Yeah, even just passing through the living room reminds me that I'm not alone when someone's someone else is in there. Again, I'm not really complaining about that much. It's more about the kitchen, really. Like, I would cook everything from scratch. I would not care as much about time maxing if it weren't for the fact that I have to share the kitchen with other people. And as I said, you can only control yourself, so that is exactly what I'm going to do. Anyway, the next pro is laundry access. I get free laundry machines in-house, and I save money and hassle compared to laundromats. And the and mild germophobia. Actually, I have clothes drying in the dryer right now as I record this. For context, the laundry machines are in the next room over. You might hear them if you max out the volume, but I have voice isolation on, so that's not really something I worry about here. But unfortunately, that brings me to the next con, recording and editing limits when it comes to this. I think I've mentioned before that when my mom works from home, my ability to record is basically shut down. She's on calls, and I do not want the microphone picking up her voice when she's on the calls, even if they are muffled or indistinguishable. I would rather not have that come up. And recently I've realized that even editing is stressful when I'm in Henry's Mojo Dojo Dormitorio bedroom with the white noise machine maxed out. If I know that she is downstairs on calls, I have a very bad habit of imagining that, like, the laundry machines or some other background noise that voice isolation didn't manage to filter out, I start to wonder if that was a human voice, especially if, again, my mom is working from home and she is on a work call. I have to play it back multiple times just to confirm. Oh, yeah, it's hard sometimes. And eventually I do conclude that it was the laundry machine or anything else down here. It does make the creative work feel like it's on someone else's schedule, which is quite frankly why I'm considering turning them into book writing days or writing and planning during the day, and then maybe fitting in some video games before I record after my mom is done working for the day. Ideally, when she's already left for the gym. See? This is exactly what I'm talking about. I can't control when she decides to work from home for whatever reason, or if she kind of has to. But I can control what I do during that time. Just like I can control whether I'm at home or not during her psychotic cleaning frenzies. I can either sit around moping, probably increasing my brain's cortisol levels, or I can organize things so that when it comes time to record or edit, I am ready to go. The moral of the story: stop moping, start doing, take what action you can to achieve your goals. Don't wait for the perfect time, but if you know that it's not going to be a good time, look for a better time. Dating limits. Living at home objectively makes that harder, and not because women get the ick when they find out you live at home with your parents? No, it's more about the cultural stereotype of you're not able to bring her home without an awkward conversation being the case. And also, me personally, I don't want to involve my parents in conversations about my dating life. Mostly because they're Gen Xers and not boomers, but they're probably not gonna actually be able to comprehend what modern dating is looking like and why I walked away. Although this really isn't a problem for me because I look at relationships, romantic relationships that is, as icing on the cake. Nice to have, but I can live without it. Anyway, on to the next pro: freedom to money max experiences. This is really more about just the fact that I can justify going out, socializing, or traveling without having to bleed cash on housing. Again, maybe I shouldn't be spending everything I would be spending on rent. It would be smarter to take what you would spend on rent and save it. At least that's what I would do. But I can enjoy time away from the house instead of feeling like I have to get my money's worth if I'm paying for housing. Maybe I would feel similarly if I lived among roommates and had low rent as a result of that. But this is the timeline I live in. As Tyler Durden said, this is my life. And rather than, again, just sit around and get frustrated at my situation, I'm going to go and do something about it by getting up and going somewhere, going out, because I feel like I lose nothing because I'm not spending money on rent for an apartment that I barely am in. See, that's something I really don't. That's really why high rent is a curse. You're not getting your money's worth for your living space because you can't just stay in there 24/7 to squeeze every penny. Like I said, if I had to spend on housing, I would almost never leave it if I could avoid it. But anyway, on to the next con. There are other limits. Most of these are superficial and random, but you can't decide on home decor. And then there are the random disruptions, like when my mom was watching that dog I talked about and brought it into the house. Whereas if I owned a place or if I was paying housing, I would be like, no pets. Obviously, if a landlord had that rule for whatever they were the landlord of, I would have no objection to that rule. In fact, I would wholeheartedly agree with them on that. So, yeah, and overall, it's just harder to protect your peace, comparatively speaking, because you don't have full control over your environment. Pros do outweigh the cons, at least in my current setup, in my current situation. If it changes, then obviously it would be if new cons are introduced that start to outweigh the pros, that'd be a different story. Like sharing the kitchen, yeah, that's a really bad con. But because I know that I can just go out and make pit stops elsewhere, and I can keep my cooking and such down to a minimum here, I'm able to make it work. Yeah, I'm maximizing this point in my life by getting out more until I actually have to start paying housing costs, at which point I will become a complete hermit. When that day comes, I will only accept paying for it if it's fully mine or if my only other option is the streets. But you know what? I'm going to wrap it up here for the video. Yeah, let me know in the comments down below what you think about all this. Do you think I'm being hyperbolic by saying I would never leave the house if I had to pay housing expenses, unless I absolutely have to? If you moved out and in with roommates instead of living with your parents, let me know in the comments down below, because again, I know that not everyone's situation is the same, but these were all just some pros and cons that I've recently realized about my living situation. Don't forget to give this video a like, subscribe for cultural commentary and rants from a man caught between generations, and feel free to join me at Zillennial Nexus Point Discord. We can keep the conversation going, and I can show you the wonders of what Grok Imagine can do with my old photos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.